everyone, it's Darkseeker here again, welcome back for another video, and today we're playing Big Warrior, courtesy of Oakijak. Now I've added the word behold into the deck title, so Big Behold Warrior, because I'm obsessed with Varkov. But thanks to Oakijak for this deck, and Oakijak sent me quite a detailed guide on how to play the deck, and if you are interested in playing this deck, then I would highly recommend that you listen to the next few minutes of this video as I summarise Oakijak's excellent guide for you. So the goal of the deck is to cheat out big minions and hit your opponent in the face, or as Oakijak puts it, smash your opponent in the face. It is essentially a fair deck, and it is not, as Oakijak says, a lame version of Big Priest, because both decks share some of the same minions. The difference being Big Priest has multiple resurrection effects, which are deemed to be somewhat unfair, whereas this deck is limited in that regard, and so it is viewed as a fairer deck. Now, a quick bit of terminology. I think it's important to address this at the beginning. Cheat cards. What do we mean by cheat cards? Well, it's cards like Gather Your Party, Commencement and Woe Cleaver. These are cards that get minions out of your deck. And then there are anti-control minions in the deck like Rattlegore and Troublemakers. Rattlegore, of course, with its Death Rattle, coming back to life with slightly lower stats, but very sticky, very difficult to deal with. And Troublemakers, of course, at the end of the turn, will put those 3/3s onto the board that will either hit your opponent in the face or hit one of your opponent's minions. And we're now going to look at the card choices then, specifically in the deck in a bit more detail. But before we do that, it's worth noting that the play style of the deck is relatively straightforward, and most of the card choices, I guess, are somewhat obvious. The removal package in this deck is pretty good, and it utilises effectively a lot of what Warrior has to offer as a class. So as we start to take a more detailed look at the card choices within the deck, let's start out with Shield Slam and Dead Man's Hand. Shield Slam obviously is very good single target removal. Dead Man's Hand is interesting. It does allow you to shuffle your hand, a copy of your hand I should say, into your deck. Useful if you've got lots of minions in hand and you want a bit of fuel later on in the game, particularly if you're facing an opponent that is very good at removing your big threats. But you should be aware that Shield Slam and Dead Man's Hand are your flex slots, so they can be replaced with other cards. For example, you could replace both of them with 2 copies of Coerce, or some other kind of board clear, depending on what kind of meta you're in. Right? So don't be afraid to adapt the deck based on the pocket meta that you are facing. And Oakijak does say that he would like to try Rancor, for example. So don't be afraid to try out different things, and then just go with whatever works for you. Now the minions in this deck are of a high quality, and they all serve a purpose. Scrapyard Colossus is in the deck to stop aggro. It's a double-layered taunt because of the Death Rattle, and if you can get this out early through Gather Your Party, for example, it can just be game-winning on the spot against an aggressive opponent. Yasharaj is in the deck to create a big board. If this comes out early through Gather Your Party or Commencement, and it's not dealt with, it'll just keep summoning big minions onto the board. You perhaps just win the game if there's no big board clear to deal with. And then of course there are the anti-control minions that we talked about at the start of the video. These are high value minions. In fact, all of these minions are high value targets. Colossus of the Moon is another possible inclusion in the deck. Now Oakijak doesn't own the card, but on further reflection I think it's agreed that Rattlegore itself is a better option than Colossus of the Moon. Rattlegore is a warrior specific card, so you may as well play Rattlegore because it's, well, uniquely available to Warrior, and this is a Warrior deck, and Rattlegore in the context of this deck is just a really, really good card. The multiple bodies that Rattlegore can give you are valuable. Your opponent is put in a difficult position. They have to make a choice. Do they want to kill off Rattlegore completely? In which case they're going to have to trade into those multiple bodies. That could be a huge, huge investment that your opponent has to make. Meanwhile, you can focus on developing and doing other things. Your opponent, therefore, may decide to ignore Rattlegore. Well, that's good for you too. That gives you the flexibility to then decide whether you want to go face with Rattlegore turn after turn after turn because your opponent is ignoring it, or do you want to start trading with your opponent's minions using Rattlegore? If you start trading, that's fine. Rattlegore dies, another Rattlegore arises from that, and you can keep getting, I guess, lots of trades done if you need that to happen, depending on the board state. So, Rattlegore, brilliant minion in this deck, and a bit more on Rattlegore a bit later on. Now there is one big weapon in this deck, and it is Woe Cleaver. It's a good card, but it's also a really fun card, because it can't be used anywhere else. It's warrior specific, and really it's specific to Big Warrior, so it's unique in that regard, a bit like Rattlegore. So you may as well give it a try because it's going to give you serious value in terms of bringing out those big threats. The only thing that you don't want it to pull out onto the board is Vargoth. But sometimes that happens and, well, that's life. You just got to deal with it. Now as we finish off discussing the card choices, some cards that are not included in the deck, Dimensional Ripper, the Boom Reaver and the Boom Ship, are not too good. 10 mana is too late for a cheat card, and so is 9 mana. And you don't want the minions in your hand. So the Boom Reaver has an anti-synergy with the deck, and is of course 10 mana. So that rounds out our card choices, and now let's talk about the mulligan. Now in general, with your mulligan, you should always throw back minions. You do not want to draw into them in your hand. You want to cheat them out onto the board with your spells and your weapon. Now if you have a cheat card in your mulligan that isn't Woe Cleaver, you should keep it. But only keep one of those cheat cards if you're facing aggro. Now being on coin is better for you because you can play one of your cheat cards a little earlier, and if you are unsure what your opponent is, maybe assume they are aggro and treat it like you are mulliganing for going up against an aggressive opponent. Remember that if you see Woe Cleaver in your hand, get rid of it. Okay, it's bad to keep in the opening hand. And Athletic Studies is actually pretty nice in all matchups because depending on what you're facing, you may well find a rush minion that is appropriate for that given situation from the choice that's offered to you. So yes, Athletic Studies is perhaps a sleeper card in this deck. Now in terms of a bit more specific guidance regarding facing aggressive opponents, you should throw away any cards that cost more than 4 mana unless it's Gather Your Party. Commencement is a great card in this deck, but it's 7 mana in cost, and against aggro that may be too late, so maybe throw away Commencement. The big options here for you to deal with aggressive opponents are Minefield, Bash, Barricade, and Sword and Board. Against control opponents, you should keep the cheat card, even if it's Commencement, and you want to pop off on turn 5 or 6 with the coin, or on turn 6 and 7 without the coin. Bladestorm is better into a control matchup, as it will often kill one big minion that they cheat out, like a Mal'Ganis or an Enhanced Dreadlord, and getting Rattlegore out is a big goal in the control matchup because Rattlegore is, as Oakijak puts it, relentless and intimidating with how loud he is. I think there is a psychological factor here when you play Rattlegore. If your opponent is playing with their sound on and they're just getting whacked in the face by Rattlegore with that sound effect, I think it can just be a bit destabilizing and a little bit intimidating, whether consciously or subconsciously. I think it has an impact. So that's just something to note. Against combo decks, to quote Oakijak, you are combo food. You will lose to any combo fast enough before you could do anything, and you have no disruption. So for combo, just mulligan like you would for a control matchup. And finally, we're just going to look at the play pattern or the play style of the deck. Now, Oakijak says it's a very straightforward deck to play and claims to not be an experienced deck builder. I'm not so sure how true that is because this deck has been performing very well for me, so I think Oakijak is an experienced deck builder, but it's just being very modest about his accomplishments and his skills. Now, you are hero powering with this deck and playing removal spells until you can get a large body out onto the board. When you have the large body on the board, what do you do with it? Well, as the message on your screen says in the big yellow font, you should point that body face. Go face with your minions. Because you don't have much in the way of staying power with this deck. Once the minions are killed off, they're gone. Unless it's Rattlegore with the death rattle value, or Scrapyard Colossus also with its death rattle. But generally speaking, once the minions are dead, they're dead. And you're not Big Priest, you're not going to be resurrecting these minions back to life constantly. Your resources are somewhat more limited. So you need to be a bit more careful. Dead Man's Hand is something just to comment on again. We talked about it earlier on in the video. Now, we do not want to draw minions into our hand. The whole point of this deck is to cheat them out onto the board with your spells, with your cheat cards. But inevitably, you are going to draw some of those minions into your hand. It's going to happen. So if they're in your hand, you may as well get a bit more value out of them by playing Dead Man's Hand and shuffling a copy of the hand back into your deck. Now, there are useful situations and circumstances that surround this. For example, if you're facing a control opponent that specialises in removing your board, that specialises in removing big minions, then because of Dead Man's Hand, you may have some more fuel that you can put onto the board and make the game last a little bit longer. But if you are utilising Dead Man's Hand, you should be careful not to shuffle Vargoth into the deck, because the longer the game goes on, Oakijak does note that Vargoth gets progressively worse. So please be aware of that. But in conclusion, this is a very straightforward deck to play. But if you have any questions, Oakijak is more than happy to answer them, so you can leave your questions in the comments section below and I'll ask Oakijak to respond. Alternatively, you could find Oakijak in the For Doomhammer Discord server. But thank you very much for listening to this deck introduction. It is a much longer deck introduction than what I normally do, but this is such a special deck and has been such an enjoyable deck to play that I think it really has deserved this extended deck introduction. But without any further ado now, let us look at this deck in action on the Wild Mode ladder.
Furion! I must protect the wild. Victory or death!
Victory or death? What a choice. I know which one I prefer. I prefer victory. And against the Druids, it's hard to tell. Is it Jade Druid? Is it Torgwaggle Druid? Is it some kind of aggro token Druid? If it's token Druid, we are equipped here to deal with some of the early pressure. We have 2 spells in hand that can help against early tokens, but Gather Your Party is such a massive pickup. That could just win us the game. If they can't deal with the minion that comes out, of course. Now, given what our opponent has been doing, we have to assume it's a slow Druid deck. In which case, Gather Your Party does become, I think, all the more pertinent in terms of cheating out a big threat. We want to start cheating out big threats before they can put big threats onto the board. Now I could just put Vargoth down on the board here. A tempo Vargoth with no Behold capability on this turn. Just a body. I want to see what the opponent invests to deal with it. Okay, that's actually fortunate that their Vargoth was not brought out by the open summons. Brawl is a gamble, but let's see if we win the gamble. I think we do, because we can attack. And now we're green, now we can pass the turn. Behold! Into nothing. So yes, that was great. Very, very lucky. Oh no. They've got their own Vargoth, who is going to do a very useful Behold in just a moment. But let's see what comes out onto the board now. Behold! Into nothing. Excellent. Our Vargoth is alive. And that means double the value. And you may view that as triple the value. 2 minions from Behold and 1 minion from Y'Shaarj. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So what saves them here? Poison Seeds. Poison Seeds will still leave a 7/7 body on the board. And I'm so impressed with this. I want to emote. I really do. But I know it's not a very nice thing to do. So I'm going to resist. Behold! Sorry, I just love beholding. Yes, we resist the emoting, but it would be so mean. We're not a big priest player. We don't emote. Unless our opponent is deliberately delaying turns, roping constantly. Behold! Into nothing.
You gonna cry?
Okay. Poison Seeds. No Poison Seeds. Oh, wow. Celestial Alignment. I don't know if that's going to do the Druid any good.
Scry more.
Can we just kill them here? I believe this is lethal. Yep, that's lethal. Behold! Oh dear, that hurt.
You gonna cry?
Awesome. Okay, heading into our next game is a Warlock. Now, Gather Your Party seems very sensible. It's one of our cheat cards. I'm actually keeping the rest of this hand. I'm afraid that if I chuck any of this away, that I'll end up drawing minions, which we don't want to do. But Athletic Studies is going to be what I play first here. Hello, Rattledore. Kargath seems fine. Kargath Prime is something I'd like to cheat out, if it was possible. So thinking ahead to the possibility of coining out Gather Your Party on turn 5.
So many possibilities.
How hard can it be to choose a card on turn 2? Come on, opponent. Thank you. Nothing to do here, really. Just pass. Could coin out the barricades. That'll give us early board presence, but I think coining out the gather your party is far, far better. So Kargath for 3 may just be the play next turn, even if they don't play a minion. Come on. Can we choose a card, please? It's turn 3. Can't be that difficult. Gosh, this must be such a compelling choice of cards that they've got.
So many possibilities.
So many possibilities. There were only 2 possibilities. Okay, opponent wakes up. Excellent. Okay, just making a preemptive trade in there. Just want to weaken that Deathlord. Deathlord, obviously, such a bad card for our opponent in this matchup. I don't think our opponent knows that we are a big warrior. We've not really given it away yet, have we? So we kill off the Deathlord next turn, assuming that Kargath lives on this turn. It does. Okay. Let's see what we get. That'll do. Okay. So, looking good for us. Coin, gather your party next turn. Very, very solid.
This is not what we stood for.
So clearly we're facing Arena Lock here. Do I want to coin, gather your party? Or do I want to kill this? I think this is okay. I like a clear board. Would gather your party have just been better that turn and we don't worry about Talon? I guess so. But then, I don't know. I just felt like clearing it.
I wonder.
What does that play around? Plague of Flames? Do they play that? I think they do. But then if they want to Plague of Flames, they could just play another minion and Plague of Flames it. But then why would you want to Plague of Flames a Scrapyard Colossus? Because of the Death Rattle. Interesting choice of Kazakus Potion too. Beautiful. Behold! Oh, hello. It's a shame we can't rush with that, but fair enough. That's a big body. Potentially we're about to gain an absolute ton of armor. Now we are building up this hand of big minions. There's 2 in hand. If we can get Dead Man's Hand at some point, maybe that would be good. Okay.
Extraordinary. There is so much untapped power.
I quite like the idea of having 2 Rattlegores available to me. So yes, Dead Man's Hand with a Rattlegore I think is pretty sweet. Commencement? I'm not sure if we do it here. With Vargoth on board. I am worried about overcommittal, by the way. And playing into a massive board clear. So I'm going to kill the Vargoth. Seems like a mistake, right?
You're in my school now.
But I think it's fine. If we'd gone face with the Vargoth there, the opponent would be at 1. If we hadn't traded and gone face instead. So they wouldn't be dead, right? And if commencement cast twice, and we got the other troublemaker, would there have been room on the board for another 3/3 to come out? I don't think so, right? So I think my play was okay. But they are dead now.
You gonna cry?
Wow. Just wow. Turn 8 lethal. Okay. Another Warlock. And it could be Dark Glare. It could be Dark Glare. I think that'd be problematic. And so, what do we do here? Do I just keep everything? I don't even know if this is correct. Oakijak, if you're watching this, was this correct? This mulligan? We've got a cheat card. We've got some removal. Given that we don't know what we're facing, I guess it was okay to keep all of that.
Side effects?
Another arena lock?
Trust me.
Perhaps? Or maybe it's something else entirely. We shall soon find out. Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. We have the coin as well. This is really good for us. A gather your party followed by a commencement, I think, is excellent. If it was just commencement and we didn't have gather your party, that's not as good. Because, you know, turn 6 is a lot sooner than turn 7. In the context of this deck, being able to cheat something out, well, on turn 5 with the coin is such a big deal. One turn can just make all the difference. So board pressure on 5 in this case. And then it will be board pressure on 7. But yeah, that turn or two earlier is such an important thing. So I think we just do it, see what happens. Alright, take it.
You gonna cry?
Oh, that's pretty cute. Sure. Oh, hello. That's great. And we do it all over again.
You gonna cry?
Oh, this is just disgusting. Turn 5, gather your party. Turn 6, gather your party. Now will be a turn 7 commencement. Absolutely disgusting.
At last, a worthy disciple.
So great. Okay, Kazakus potion time. What are you taking? 5 mana spell with a polymorph effect? For next turn, perhaps? Or are you going to be greedy, go for a 10 mana spell? Oh, 1 mana. Alright, didn't freeze the minion that you'd hoped for, clearly. Well, it is time. Commencement. That's decent.
You gonna cry?
And with this early troublemaker, you really do become the aggressor.
Your wish is my suggestion.
You go from being a potentially slow deck with expensive minions to a fast, aggressive deck that's cheated out an expensive minion early, and that expensive minion is generating tokens that potentially go face at the end of a turn.
So many possibilities.
It really does shake things up quite significantly, and it puts your opponent on the back foot. It just creates a lot of pressure for them. And now they are looking to Zephyrus. I don't know. I don't see how Zephyrus saves them here with 6 mana to play with. That's not enough. It's smart. They get the double-layered taunt with Divine Shield. It's smart. However, it's not enough. They may think they're alive on board, but we have these spells in hand. It's all more than enough. It's just a question of how do we do this. Alright, there we go. Right, this final highlight against Secrets Mage. When you needed Gather Your Party to put out a Scrapyard Colossus onto the board because it's a taunt. But it doesn't. We get Rattlegore. And in this matchup, Rattlegore not good enough because it gets ignored. When the Mage is at 30 and they've got a wide board, sure, Rattlegore can trade in here and get value from the trades, but we really, really needed the taunt. That second Scrapyard. And you may look at this and think that with my health total, I'm not in a terrible position here with the armor added on, but those minions are going to hit my face. There are fireballs that are sure to come. I mean, Cloud Prince essentially is a fireball from a minion. That was 6 damage to my face. Look, I'm nearly dead. Secrets Mage is a problem. Unless Gather Your Party can get played early and bring out a relevant minion to deal with whatever the Secrets Mage is doing at that time. So yeah, Gather Your Party is so important, but it's got to pull the right thing that you need. And I've also found that in addition to Secrets Mage, the buff Paladin variant that is circulating at the moment with the charged minions, that can also be problematic if you don't have a good early Gather Your Party, because otherwise within a few turns they just buff their hand and overwhelm you. So those two decks have been a real challenge, but alternatively, as you saw in this video, Reno decks were quite easy to beat, it would seem, with a good early Gather Your Party followed by maybe a commencement. And well, what I assumed was some kind of maybe Togwaggle or Jade Druid that we were facing earlier. Again, we just pressured them with the early big threats, cheated out onto the board super early, and we just won the game. So some good illustrations in this video of how to win with this deck. But more than anything else, it feels like a fair and honest deck. Unlike Big Priest and unlike some of the other meta decks that are out there, this deck just has that feeling of being just right. I think that is the way to put it. And a lot of fun to play. So thank you very much to Oakijak. If you've got any questions about this deck, please leave them in the comments section below, and I'm sure that Oakijak will get back to you. Thank you very much for joining me, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the content. I really enjoyed producing this video. And I will see you all again very soon for more Wild Mode fun. But until next time, please look after yourselves, please stay safe, and as always, please be good to one another.